Okay, I don't think that would be necessary. You're in the parks department, you get away with it. The cool events guy, right? I'm pretty sure he was wearing a nearly identical shirt when I saw him now. In the mayor's office. But no, I think we're set. She took the amendments. She just agreed to the final wording, and we took these ones completely out of it. So it's just because her whole thing was like amplified sound outside. Okay. Not music. So we reworded it for that. And we also carved out a specific exemption for any city permit, such as to block parties, park rentals, and there was some other thing.
Because I talked with him over now on Saturday. That is
now it's always a question of how much political capital.
Jerry Mitchell. There you go.
No problem. Thank you for your help. That was great.
All right, we'll go ahead and get started. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our Tuesday, April 11th City Council agenda session. I'll now call this meeting to order. If I can get a motion on our minutes, please. I do have a motion on the minutes and a second to that motion. They will stand without objection. Council, if you will look over the agenda for this afternoon, we have ordinances, no ordinances on final reading. We do have ordinances on first reading. If you will allow me, before we get into any conversation on the agenda, Mr. Nobblet, we have a public hearing, a resolution, and an ordinance all combined this evening.
Yes, sir.
We have the public hearing currently listed under special presentations. Would you advise us, please, on, it feels like those should be grouped together
Yes, sir.
to maintain consistency and continuity. And would you give me some advice on that, please?
Currently on, I guess, page 4 of your agenda, we have the mayor's office resolution and ordinance. The resolution is demonstrating the intent to adopt the CPACER ordinance, and that's required by the state statute here in Tennessee.
Mm-hmm.
And then the ordinance has to be adopted, incorporated the provisions. And I would recommend that the public hearing occur right before item L on your agenda, and then at least have an opportunity for people to be heard on that issue, then do your resolution, then do your ordinance on first reading.
That sounds to me like sound advice. Council, do you have, Dr. Burns, I see your light, please, ma'am.
It was about A.
Okay, can we go back to A? Can
Yeah,
we
that's
put a
fine.
pin
Go
in
ahead
that
and
real
finish.
quick? Okay, I want to try to get some consensus and, like I said, continuity built into the CPACER. Council, do you have any objections? Let me ask that question. To holding the public hearing on the CPACER, it will be after item K and before item L. Okay. So Phil, without objection from council, can we move the public hearing to after item K before L? And then I do see that you have noted item M is an ordinance on first read. Item L has to be completed before moving on to item M. Is that, do I have that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
We'll get it done.
All right. Then if without objection from council, one more time across the dais, I'm not seeing any objection to that. So we will do that.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you, sir. That's cleared up. Dr. Burrs, you had a question about item A, please.
Yeah, I don't have a question, sir. Administration suggested a bit of massaging of that ordinance. We have the new ordinance here, but I would like for Chris to get up and say for the record what it is.
Okay. Are you planning to, let me ask you this, are you planning to, is this an alternate version that you're planning to add?
Phil, what do you want to do? Listen to the change. It's a word change. Go ahead.
Thank you, council. So, yep, the mic's working this week. That's good. We're starting great today. We had two changes that Councilwoman Burrs has graciously accepted as part of her ordinance. So I believe Phil has a new draft. I believe it's version 6. Is that correct, Phil?
Yes, sir.
The two changes were exempting city permitted events such as block parties, park reservations, family reunions, that sort of thing from the outdoor evening because they would still occur within city permit times. And then taking musical instruments out of the amplified music section because of course we want to encourage children to practice musical instruments in the evenings at home. That was it.
Okay. Phil, my question for you is, does that trigger a major modification to an alternate version?
Not really. It's just made a minor clerical change at this point in time. You just need to have version 6 be the version that you agreed on first read.
Okay. Council, I will then go across the dais looking for any objections to the changes that are proposed in version 6 to be added to the agenda this evening. Phil, I am seeing no objections to those changes, so make it so, please.
Thank you, sir. Thank you,
Thank
ma'am.
you. All right, council, if you would, take a look through your agenda. This afternoon, we have several first read planning items, wastewater item, resolution. We have an ARP allotment batch again this week. If you have any questions, I'll watch the board. Councilwoman Hill, I see your light, ma'am.
Thank you, Chairman. A question in the resolutions for the mayor's office, item K. Is this correct that Nicole will be appointed to the board for just a 3-month term?
You will see probably someone, she's already here.
Yeah, the administration would actually ask that we defer this for 2 weeks. We're working out a few final details just to ensure that this has no implications with our relationship with CHA.
Okay.
Good catch, Councilwoman Hill. The administration is asking and has asked this morning for a 2-week
Okay.
deferral on that
Thank you.
to iron out some creases, so to speak. And we've already covered items L and M, so we will make that change under Parks and Outdoors. Councilpersons Hill and Coonrod, anything to add there? Okay. Under Public Works, Councilwoman Coonrod, you still want that fire station? You sure? All right. Well, we will eagerly await your light on item O this evening. We have several other appointments. Any questions or comments on those? Another item for wastewater. Okay, moving into next week's proposed agenda. You would take a quick look at that. I know there will be several planning items on final read right off the bat. Items on first reading under wastewater and then resolutions for more appointments. Seeing no questions on our proposed agenda. Then let's look at purchases for this evening. I believe we have one item that was sent out. We do have one RFP request. If you have any questions about the one purchase item or the RFP request, please hit your light and I'll be glad to have administration address us on those. Give you just a second. Very good. Moving into future considerations. Let me know if there are any questions or concerns on future considerations. I am seeing no lights this afternoon, so I believe questions have been asked and answered. I'm showing no department reports, and we are no committees this afternoon. So any questions or any further business? We do have an attorney-client meeting, a short one with Mr. Noblet, if you would, in the conference room. Any other business to come before the agenda session? Councilwoman Coonrod, please.
Thank you, Chair. I had to read over the ordinance, and I apologize because I had been studying what Councilwoman Hill was presenting. But I want to get clarity on yelling for the noise ordinance. Yelling or hawking in the streets. I mean, I yell at kids all day long in Eastdale because so what? I'm just trying to figure out we can't keep, I mean, we're trying to silence people from yelling. Like, I need to understand some clarity about what is it that we're trying to, what's the objective with that, with yelling?
I'll let Phil take that one.
The provisions at least are in other sections of the city code as well in there, but it disturbs the comfort, the quiet, or the repose of the folks in your next door house in there if they're asleep. If they are at least coming outside because they are disturbed about that sound, then that would be an issue for, I guess, enforcement. So it's trying to deal with the aspect of disturbing the quiet and comfort of people that are in your neighborhood that may be trying to sleep at the same time you're hollering at that young.
So that's gonna be a lot of violations in my district, because people and grandparents screaming to see where their kids are. I mean, not in a, it may disturb some, but I just kind of feel like it gets to being petty.
Yes, ma'am, but it also helps in the neighborhood there to keep people calmer in your neighborhood, hopefully.
I don't know, I mean, I object to that one. I mean, I don't think that's.
And we have that same provision, I think, in other sections.
That was actually my question. Thank you. Has that been there? Is that a new insert, or has that been
This is
there all along?
This section is going in very similar to what is currently in the city code, chapter 25. Let me get my sections right here. 25. Code section 67, I believe. Double check. Yeah. We currently in the code in here have yelling in the streets between the hours of 11 and 7 in other areas, and it's still in the same manner which disturbs the quiet, comfort, or repose of persons in any residence.
Right.
So we have that currently in the code.
But the new one doesn't have the time, 11 midnight to 7. I'm cool with adding that back in there because here it's removed. So that means if I'm yelling for kids to get out the street or whatever, and if my neighbor uncomfortable with it, they're gonna call the law. Not just, our communities are kind of different, but they may want quiet in, North Shore. In my community, like, that's just the nature of our community. People yelling, having fun, and I mean, to say no yelling during the daytime, that I'm not understanding it, but the 11 to 7 in the morning, if we can insert that back in there. And then on number 5, the operations of vehicles. I mean, in my community, and I'm only speaking for mine, I can't speak for anybody else's, but we have a lot of people whose cars are just, in need of repair. The muffler may be dragging at the moment, or, it may be rattling because they need some other stuff that need to be fixed. Now, people can be petty according to this and call and say that it's making unnecessary noise. I mean, and if that's their mode of transportation and they can't afford to get it fixed, of course, it's going to continue to be that way. So what can we do to try to fix this one, number 5?
As long as y'all want to make changes, let me know what changes the body wants to make, and we'll make them on here. And I just need to know where you want to go.
I just need to make sure that it's going to be fair to the constituents that I serve in my district. Because in our neighborhoods, a lot of the people that I represent, I mean, they can't afford the maintenance on their cars. And it's going to make loud noises. It just is. And I don't want an ordinance to put a barrier for these individuals.
Part of the problem is so that folks can be able to rest in their homes without loud noises interfering. And
I get that.
One of the things going on.
I get it.
That's an issue for y'all to decide as a matter in the city.
Yeah, I mean, I understand the ordinance of what's the purpose, but some neighborhoods, I mean, isn't it just not going to be complete silence?
Yes, ma'am.
And my district is one of those districts. I mean, in fact, all 4 Black council districts is that way. And in some parts of everybody else districts, you got those parts where it's just going to be loud.
Yes, ma'am. I don't know that we can have rules that are just affecting some districts and not others. So we look at that. We've dealt with that on the aspect of the downtown area. If you want to separate residential districts by race, that may be another issue.
Councilwoman Hill, can I go to Councilwoman Hill? Councilwoman Coonrod?
Thank you, Chairman.
Yes, ma'am.
So I think that Councilwoman Coonrod raises some important points. The yelling element was concerning to me as well as being overly broad and potentially punitive. That said, I have had, actually, I think the very first call that I got as a city councilwoman was from a really distressed homeowner who had ongoing fighting and yelling of her next door neighbors. And the police had limited abilities to really offer any assistance. The vitriol and the curse words that were constantly being yelled, actually from their porch, not even from the street, were very difficult. And so I can appreciate why Councilwoman Burrs would bring this to the body as an addition to the noise ordinance. Just a brief update for the council related to my conversation with Chris Acuff. I have learned that our contract with UTC has expired. It's been closed by UTC, so we don't currently have any research allocation or agreement with UTC. So that's something that we'll have to take a look at a later date. And so I've put a pin in the research related to the glass back mufflers and things. Thank you.
Dr. Burrs, yeah, I expected your light, ma'am. Please.
So I didn't put any of that in there. That's been in the law for a long time. The only thing I did, there's some misconception here, was take what was in the amplified noise downtown and move it to residential areas. All of this has been in the law all along. One other thing, and it was at Phil's suggestion, and that is that we take out the decibel meter, because that was worthless. This is the law that's always been there. If you all will go to the original law, it was, Councilman Smith is going, yeah, it's always been there. All we did was take it to the burbs. And so that none of this is, I can't take credit for any of this, except for taking it to the burbs. That's it. And if I remember correctly, Councilwoman Dotley said, let's take out burbs and let's say residential areas, because all of our areas, I don't want to speak for you, are dealing with noise. So, yeah, so it's Councilwoman Burrs, it isn't my thing. I just took it because it needed doing. And any one of you can help co-sponsor if you want. So administration wanted to add a couple of things, and you heard what they wanted to answer, what they wanted to add a few minutes ago. And so you guys have at it, whatever else you want to do. But it does need to go forward, because the response that I've gotten, and I'm sure many of you have gotten from folks, has been really positive. Like, there's got to be some way in a growing city that we can protect the quiet enjoyment of our property during reasonable hours. And so that's where we are. So can't take credit for it, guys. It's always been there.
So, Councilwoman Coonrod, do you have suggestions that we could open up here in this session to amend or strike certain words to get to where you'd like to be? Or would you like to?
I agree that we need to have something in place, or something that's in place that's reasonable. I mean, we can add a time back. I mean, like Councilwoman Burrs stated, like she just took it from the downtown music district to add to expand to residents, so it didn't cover residential areas before. But I just want to make sure that it's fair, like I stated before, to our constituents that we that we support and that we hear from too. I mean, each community is different. So, I mean, this may work for, whoever else is, but it's not working solely 100% for me when it comes to, the certain things and the things that I see my community members struggling with or doing. So we can put the time that was there before about the yelling, 11 o'clock at night to 7 in the morning. That's good. And then we can put a time for the operation of vehicles. I mean, 11 midnight, you should be at home in the bed anyway. But during the daytime, you may encounter somebody who car just needs maintenance and they can't afford it. And it shouldn't come across as being penalizing them simply because they can't. I mean, unless the city of Chattanooga wants to take on the burden of fixing those items for their car for them, okay, yeah, I 100% agree to that. But I don't think that's what they're gonna do. If we can put a time on that one as well.
So what I'm hearing is a proposal from you from the yelling portion of 11 PM to 7 AM. And that was, I think, originally in there,
Yes.
okay, of adding that back in. Okay, that is an option that Councilwoman Coonrod is presenting. There is, your other option was what?
I can put the same time.
Same time to what item number?
5.
5, and I apologize, I don't have it open in front of me right now. Okay, so Phil, would that constitute a major modification?
Well, you're adding stuff that has not been in there before.
Okay.
In the original, we can,
So-
yes, I'll be glad. to
We
do
need
that.
to vote on it.
Yeah.
sir.
So that would probably need, that's where I'm going with this, whether this triggers, whether this comes from the floor as a amendment, or if this item is obviously deferred for a time to discuss this, or put in as alternate version. Councilman Smith, I'm sorry, I do see your light, sir.
No problem at all, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
I'm
Yeah, I
live, but I've spoken once, so I can wait.
I'm not on. All right. Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Two things. One, on the question that was just posed, Chairman, I just recommend that those be brought as amendments. It's easier to do than, putting another revision on and going back for another week. So those can be offered as amendments from the floor. The other item I have is more of a question. Phil, in a couple areas in this, it, I think, is a little clearer, but I do want to ask on number 5, when it talks about operation of vehicles,
Yes, sir.
it says in any residential community. I guess the borders of residential community may be part of what's in question. If somebody's running down Highway 153, Highway 58, Hicks and Pike, any of your big arteries, and they are the ones revving the motorcycles, which is where we get a lot of issues out of District 2. Is that in a residential community? You can hear it from the homes, but those roads I don't believe would be constituted or considered residential.
And the purpose I thought initially in here was trying to make sure that you were dealing with residential zones. If it's adjacent to a residential zone, we did at least put in the last section here, number 11, the provisions, if it's plainly audible for certain things within a distance of a certain amount of feet away from a residential neighborhood, then that can be a concern. We can add language like that if you wish to at least create some sort of distance restriction if you want to. If it's more than a specific distance, makes it really hard to say it's within the residential zone.
Yeah, and I agree. And I was just making clear that we may be assuming, or some people may assume, whether it's us or the community, that when you're talking about vehicles, that them driving down a main artery because it is near a residential neighborhood would apply to them. And in this case, I'm not sure that would be the case.
That's another issue on zoning,
Okay.
whenever you're dealing with it, as to how close is it together.
Got it. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Yes.
Councilwoman Hill, did you have your light?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am, you have the floor.
Thank you. I am fine with the times that Councilwoman Coonrod is suggesting for the speech. However, I would prefer, if we were going to add a time as an amendment, Councilwoman Coonrod, for vehicle noise, that it would be from 9 PM until 7 AM, which is consistent with the lawnmower, leaf blower, weed eater, chainsaw, et cetera element. Because this is 11 o'clock on a weekday is much too late for people that are dealing with this on the regular at Coolidge Park all summer long. That would be my request. Otherwise, I won't be able to support the ordinance. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So what I'm hearing is to be on the lookout possibly for an amendment proposal this evening. So thank you very much for your comments. Any other questions or comments before we adjourn? Yes, ma'am, please. Hit your light for me. Hit your light for me, please, Councilwoman. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Ms. Nicole distributed to all the council members for us to establish a reparation study. And it's in your packets here that we have previously when the civil unrest had happened in the city of Chattanooga, we had, approved the ordinance around racial equity. And so it's just adding on to that, to the establishment of a feasibility study and authorization of expenditures to develop, establish, and implement reparations. Also to include, that would be housed under the equity department, and it lists, everything here that will create a panel of, a group of people to be represented on that reparations committee. We know that it is budget cycle as well. I did reach out to Dr. Marcus Malden, who is a professor at UTC, to see what would the cost of a study, what would it be? So I'm waiting on him to provide with that information as well. So we could, I'd like to see it placed on the agenda, or either we could place it in committee for discussion.
Would you like to have this in strategic planning?
Yes, we can place it in strategic planning.
All right, we'll put that in our next strategic planning session.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions or comments come before council before we move into attorney-client this afternoon? Okay, then agenda session, we are adjourned.